Hi, everybody. Welcome to All Things Metaphysical podcast with Kellie and Gail. As always, I am the Gail part.
I am the Kelly part.
This is episode 24. So, one of the things that we thought we'd start talking about, because Kellie and I were talking before the show, is the difference between being in your ego and using your gifts. Because I don't know about you, but for me, whenever I say stuff, people are like, that's your ego. I'm like, pretty sure it's not. I'm probably one of the I don't really get caught up in my ego too much. At least I don't think I do. But people love to tell me I am, and I get a lot of projection from other people onto me. What are your thoughts on that?
I think sometimes people can't really tell the difference, and that's probably what they're talking about with you.
Hmm.
Sometimes people can't really tell if it's their ego or if it's not. Um, One of the things that I learned from guides is you're coming from ego if you're in a state of judgment
Hmm.
or if you are trying to beat your point home to somebody else. Um, Otherwise, I think a lot of us who do readings
Hmm.
and are intuitive get accused of being an ego because we get messages and information from way up higher than the average human is expecting. And sometimes what I do with a reading, and I have to now explain
Hmm.
myself ahead of time to clients, um, is I just what I hear is what I say. The information I get, I just there you go, do with it what you will. And a lot of times clients will say, well, that doesn't seem that seems like it's ego. And I'm like, do angels have egos? I don't know. That's where a lot of my information comes from. You know, and that's when it's the same thing when I do energy work.
Hmm.
People say, well, you're so powerful that you do energy work. And it's not coming from me. This is not my energy. It's coming through me.
Hmm.
And I think sometimes it's hard to tell if it's ego or if it's not personally. You kind of have to investigate the route a little bit,
Hmm.
and you can find out really quickly if you know what you're looking for.
I was thinking about, while you were explaining that, and welcome to our viewers who are watching us. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments section and we will get to them. I was working with somebody who read the Akashic records at the time. And I remember like laying there on the table, and all of a sudden I had my palms up because I heard turn your palms up.
Uh-huh.
And then rainbows were shooting out of my hands, like from one hand to the other hand. And the lady I was working with is like, well, how are you doing that? And why are you doing that? And I'm like, I don't know. All of a sudden I can shoot rainbows out of my hands. And I'm like, it was so much fun. I was like having a field day with all of that. So, have you ever had experiences like that? Because for me, I know when I'm like, wow, this is so cool. How does this happen? I am so not in my ego when
Yeah.
I'm like that. I'm in that like childlike awe and wonder.
Right. Right. Absolutely. When I had my Reiki studio booked pretty much all the time, I would have clients come in and they would all of a sudden say, "What was that?" And I'm like, "Close your eyes and you won't have to worry about it." But yeah, sometimes I think they like to kind of play with us
Mhm.
because they know we can see it and we know, they know we can handle it.
So
Um,
would that be why I always have orbs over my head when I do these that are floating all over the place?
yeah, they're messing with you. Yeah.
I love when they dive bomb my head, like in the middle of like a show or something I'm recording. And part of me, just to be kind of a smart ass, wants to go, ow.
Yeah.
But I think that would probably flip other people out. So I don't.
Yeah, I had a chiropractor who asked me to please not come back because every time I was there, they would have things happen, lights, mostly lights,
Uh,
and they were usually either a bright white light or a bright blue light or a purple light, and it would just be there and it would be gone, and everyone would see it. And he finally figured out it was me. Like, I don't know what's happening. I'm not doing it, I promise. But
Well, you probably were doing it, you just didn't know how you were doing it or why
right.
you were doing it, but it was just energy that was with you. I have the tendency to blow light bulbs a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the weirdest thing, and watches. Like, I can't wear a watch with a battery anymore because every month I was going back to the jeweler and I'm like, "My battery's dead." And they're like, "That is not possible. It has only been a month." I'm like, "Here, look at the watch. It doesn't work." They're like, "How are you doing it?" And then I had gotten a new ring and I was at work one day and the ring cracked right down the side of the ring in
Oh, wow.
two. And the jeweler's like, "That's not possible."
I have to tell you, since you mentioned rings, for years, my ex and I had custom wedding rings made. For years, the stones would fly out of they weren't just, oh, it's missing. Where did it go? It was like, phew, and both of them, there were two stones, and then it was our birthstones, and they would fly out of my ring. And it kept going back to the jeweler, and they kept trying different ways of making sure it didn't fly out. And I'd be on the way home and it would bounce off the car window. It was just ridiculous. And
Suppose
we,
that was some kind of message?
you think, it's amazing how many messages we miss during our lives. We're just like, oh well, that was weird, huh? Wonder what that's all about. Yeah, yeah.
So, if any of our viewers have any questions, again, please put them in the comments section. We will be happy to answer them. And I think, ego versus gifts kind of ties into how do you know when things are actually signs and that you're getting messages? Because I've
Well,
had a lot of people say to me, and sometimes I'll say it to myself, is I must just be crazy.
I've said that a lot, but obviously, I have missed signs when they were practically beating me over the head with them. Um, I had a really funny thing before I had filed for divorce.
Mhm,
I was really upset because I knew what was going on. I could feel it. I knew it. I could see it.
mhm,
And I was like, well, what do I do?
mhm.
What do I do? And I went around, I said, I need a sign. I went around a corner in my house. There's an angel holding a sign. Here's your sign. I'm like, really? That's really not helpful. It was funny, but it was not helpful.
I remember I was on a road trip once and these birds kept landing and I'm like, "Get off the road. I don't wanna, run over you." And sure enough, I had to slow down and about 50 feet, there was a cop sitting disguised. I'm like,
Yeah.
"Thank you."
Yeah. I've had that too. It's usually deer with me, you
Mm,
know, and it will be in an area where deer haven't been seen in a while, and all of a sudden there's a deer in the road. But yeah, I've had that too. Sometimes, um, when people are just waking up,
mhm,
they're just starting their spiritual journey, they think they see things, but they're not sure, so they think they're losing their mind.
mm,
And I always tell them, look again, because you're seeing a flash over here. I talk to them and like,
mhm.
yeah, I see you. Who are you? What do you want? And that might make me look crazy to people, but fortunately, I live alone, so nobody sees it. But even animals can be signs.
Mm,
Um, Out here where I live, we have a lot of ravens. And when I was still selling real estate, um, I attracted ravens. And one agent told me one time she could tell when I was on my way because this big flock of ravens arrived right before I did. And I noticed it, but I didn't know anybody else noticed it.
mhm,
And fortunately, she was didn't bother her in the least. She thought it was a very cool thing. But a lot of things people get freaked out about
mhm.
needlessly. So, you have to kind of take it with a grain of salt when you're starting out. You have to ask, did I see that? If that was real, show it again. And they usually will.
Do you wanna read the question?
I was told my dad would come to me one last time before he crossed over by a dear friend. He came about a week ago. Ooh. I was in his home and he was just about to pass and he woke up and sobbed and apologized and sobbed over and over, but I couldn't hear him. I could just tell what he was saying, and he just disappeared. Um, I would say that's you. That's him telling you
Mhm.
he crossed. Everyone, uh, I have said this before, and I always get clapped back on it. Death is a beautiful experience most of the time.
Mhm.
And anytime you are close to someone and you have that kind of an experience, that is them telling you that I'm going. It's my time. I can guarantee you he's still with you though.
I can share what happened like when both my parents died. Well, one, I kept telling hospice when they were going to transition, and hospice kept telling me I was wrong. And I'm like, I don't think so. But when my mom transitioned, I went back after dinner and I saw my great aunt reach down for her. It was her time, and my mother clearly said, I won't go with her here. She wanted to spare me, even
Right.
though I just really wanted to be there. So she said 9:03. Like, okay. So I left at 9 and I went home and I got ready for bed. And then I just sat and waited for the phone call, which came at 9:45. The same thing happened with my dad. Um, I knew when he was going to transition. My mom died on August 14th, and I said to the hospice, I was pretty sure my dad was going to die on August 14th. And they're like, no, he has doesn't have any of the signs. Sure enough, August 14th, I get a phone call. Your dad has started to, make that journey towards the transition side. And then I didn't know that my grandfather had died on August 15th. And he um he died on my dad's birthday, which was June 3rd, and my dad died August 15th in the morning. And I was up all night waiting for the phone call. And at about 4:30 in the morning, there was a huge flash of light, like the horizon in my room. And I'm
Mhm.
like, hi, Dad.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
That's and I've talked about this before when my grandmother died. She told me when she was going to die, and
mhm.
she was right. And I remember she came to me, and that's the only time I ever fought with my grandmother. I was like, "You get back here. What do you think?" And it was just, I'm grateful that I had that experience.
Mhm.
So many people don't. And I do think anytime we lose a loved one, they do try to
Mhm.
tell us goodbye. I don't think everyone is awake enough to realize it.
Mhm.
Um, I recently lost my aunt, and she pretty much did the same thing. She's
Mhm.
like, I have to go now, and okay, bye. What do you do? But
That
yeah,
happened with my grandmother. I was so close with my grandmother, and a week before she died, she woke me up, and she's like, "It's time to let go." So I had to do a lot of work with the rest of my family, and then she was so in control of her mind, even though her body was shutting down, that, hospice is like, "She's waiting for something." I said, "Yeah, she's waiting for her doctor to come see her, who she had a really special relationship with." He promised to come when he got back into town, and that wasn't for 3 more days. And so they leaned over and they said hospice leaned over and said to my grandmother, "Your doctor called. He would want you to be at peace," and she died an hour later.
yeah,
So,
yeah. That's it happens.
and it's just, some people, there's people who are transport angels. Everybody is gifts are a little bit different, and we all need to work together because they're all made to work together to form the bigger picture.
Right, right. Everyone has their own role to play.
Mhm.
We don't usually realize what that is, but but we do.
Mhm. So the next question is, why does the number 4 and 14 reoccur so often in my life? What does that mean?
Mm. I am not sure what I see 444 all the time.
Mhm.
Um, but I don't. I don't
I was
know.
looking for my angel book, but I don't have it close. What I would do is look up what those 2 numbers mean. There's lots of sites online that you can look up at what 4 and 14 mean, but they're numbers that have significance for you. So those are signs. Every time you see one of them is they're giving you a message that either they're with you or they want you to focus on something or they want you to do something. It's kind of like a wake-up call.
When you're looking at 14, also look up 5 because 1 and 4 are 5. Usually I see them in threes,
Mhm.
or I see some people's birthdays a lot.
And I told the story, I think, on one of the shows, when my parents were dying, there were so many synchronistic moments, and I was so attuned to all of them. I had no food in my apartment, so I stopped at Trader Joe's one night on my way home. My parents' phone number for 50 years ended at 5019. The total for my groceries was 5019. And I'm like, I understand, and every time one of those things happened, it would make me sad, but I would feel such comfort at the same time.
Right.
It's such a weird dynamic. And
Um,
one of our viewers wrote 444 means the angels are around you. Yes.
yeah.
I always like 555 myself because I'm kind of attached to fives, but
Yeah. It's interesting. And when you're looking up the numbers, the meanings of the numbers, don't just read the first 3 or 4 definitions. Dig down because every single time I've looked up a number, I keep saying it's not the first couple of things, it's further down. So don't just look at the first couple of definitions and say, oh, that's it.
if it doesn't resonate with you, keep looking because there's tons of sites that explain what numbers are. And to find the one that resonates with you is going to be the important piece.
Right.
So,
But no, you're not going crazy for seeing those numbers all the time.
when I'm having a really hard day at work, I'll see 1111, and then I know it's not an angel number, but I'll see 12 12 12, and
Yeah.
12 12 12 12. Then I'll see 111, and like every hour they'll have me look at my clock just as the number's changing because they just want me to know that even though I'm struggling so much,
They're there.
they're
Yeah.
around me.
Yeah. Yeah. That one night, I had a horrible night a while back. I woke up at 12:12, 1:11, 2:22, 3:33, 4:44. I said, fine, I'm up. It was just, you can't let me sleep. I know you're there. Just let me sleep. But
We've talked about weird experiences that we've both had when going to bed. I know that when my gifts were coming back, it was in the beginning of it. When I would close my eyes at night, I would see hundreds and hundreds of faces. And I didn't understand why I kept seeing all these faces and what it meant and what I was supposed to do with it. I'm like, I don't know any of these people. So it's just really interesting. It was a little scary, but then I realized that it was all people who had transitioned and needed help transitioning, and I
right.
needed to help them. It took me a little while to figure that out, but once I did, they came in slower.
One of the weird things that happened, I don't transition people often, but I had a small child, which always just breaks my heart anyway. But it was a little boy, and he kept appearing. And I'm like, I don't know you. What do you want? And finally, I realized what he needed help finding the light. And he came back to thank me. And I thought, you found your way back, but you couldn't find your way there.
It's funny. One of the children I helped cross over recently who was really scared to go into the light, I had Archangel Michael with me, and then he rode into the light on a unicorn.
Ah,
He's like, "That's a unicorn." I'm like, "Yes." And then he went really quickly after that. But, kids get scared too.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah. It just,
Apparently, we're talking about transitioning a lot today.
yeah, yeah. Well, a lot of the signs when I first started re-acknowledging my gifts. Um, the strongest signs that I got were through people transitioning.
Mhm.
I went through a period of time where you guys are off full of it. I don't believe any of this. Forget it. Leave me out of it. Because I had been told to shut up so often,
Mhm.
or you don't know, or you don't see that. And it kind of reassured me and gave me the confidence that it wasn't my problem, it was their problem.
Mhm.
Just because they didn't see didn't mean I didn't see. But it was people transitioning that gave the biggest signs. When my great grandmother died, I had asked her, when you get to the other side, this other side people are always talking about. When you get there,
Mhm.
let me know you made it. And she did.
Mhm.
And I'm like, okay, I'm good. Let's move on now.
I think one of the points you touched on in that, which is really important, is learning to trust
Yeah,
and learning to trust the messages that you get and learning to have faith in yourself and being authentically you. Because so many of us, because of gifts, have been told that we're crazy or that we shouldn't be able to do this or how can you possibly know that? You're reading my mind. Stop reading my mind. It's creeping me out. I don't like to be around you because I don't know what you're going to say. So it's learning to own all that and just realize that you will find your tribe. You
yeah,
will find the people that you're meant to be with that you don't freak out.
right. Yeah. It
Takes a
takes
while.
yeah, it takes a long while, but you'll get there.
We all do. We all end up attracting the people that we need to attract. So it was really funny because I was doing a friend's podcast who's watching right now, or podcast, Facebook Live. Their Facebook Live is called Silly Rainbows. They pick cards and chat. It's on Tuesday nights. And so I was a guest last night, and this person at the end was talking about stigmata pain. And and I'm like, well, which one of the three of us do you think had the stigmata pain? Because I figure there's no time to practice and there's no time to start to yourself been in a safe situation where everyone's open and willing to receive. So finally, the person is like, "You're the one with the stigmata pain, and you're from Atlantis." Like, well, I'm going to be honest with you, and I'm going to answer that is yes. I went through a period where I had a lot of stigmata pain.
Yep.
And working in a behavioral health hospital, I just didn't want to start to bleed. That would freak me out. But, thank God it never came to that, and I've spent a lot of lifetimes in Atlantis, so that person was correct. And I think when you can just validate someone like that, even though that's not something that I wanted to talk about last night or things like that, sometimes we're given the opportunity to share the information that we have in our experiences in order to bring other people up. And I looked at that as one of those experiences.
That's a cool one. Um, really, I mean, even though you didn't want to talk about it, I had a weird experience with our friend Jody Doty
Mhm.
in San Diego one year. Um, we were in a hotel room. We had done an event. All of a sudden, we both sit up in the bed. And she says, "Angels in the pipe, angels in the pipe." And I'm like, "There's angels in the pipe? What pipe? We have to let them out. What's going on?" It's in the middle of the night. So a couple hours later, I get a phone call from someone who had lost their dog named Angel. And they found her in one of those giant concrete pipes. And I was like, what are the chances of that? It was like a state away, you know, and we both heard, I guess we were responding to him calling the dog,
Uh-huh.
but it was just bizarre. And what do you do with that? The other people that had been sharing our room were not amused, but those things happen. I find when you find your tribe and you're together in the same place, weird things will happen to you. It's like it amplifies everything.
Well, because it raises the frequency to a certain vibration where the veil gets even thinner because everyone is open to it and everybody is willing to have those experiences. So spirit's like, this is fun. Let's play.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So this is kind of cool. So if our viewers have any other questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. I was just trying to think of other things that have been going on. I know that February's energy hasn't been quite as intense
Mm.
as January's. It's still fairly intense though, but it's a lighter intensity than most of January was.
I think this whole first part of this year
Mm,
is about really deep healing and really deep spiritual growth.
mhm,
Um, I've had calls from people that, pretty much ran me out of town at one point lately who said, okay, remember when you were talking about that? What did that? And it's like people are kind of coming around. They're kind of more curious
mhm.
than freaked out. And I think that's a really good sign for humanity. But
I completely agree with you. I've had lots of calls about, I know one was the case where this young man was missing.
Mm,
And, so gave them whatever information and I posted it because sometimes other people's perspective is helpful as well. We talked about this on one of the other shows. One of my friends who does a lot of work with the police asked me, "Well, what do you think happened to this lady?" I'm like, "Well, she's not dead like everybody else said. She's on the fringe of trying to live off the grid. If you look in this area, you'll find her." And sure enough, they found her. But
yeah.
it's really cool to be able to use your gifts that way to like really change a situation and shed light on things that I always think of those TV shows. I can't remember the name of the TV show where she worked with the police department, the psychic. I think it was patterned after Alison Dubois. I think that was her name.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of the show right.
Medium.
Medium, yeah.
Medium.
And it's really cool to be able to use gifts like that. I like when I get those phone calls because it's like, oh, there's a purpose I have these, you know.
Sometimes, and we've talked about this.
Mm,
Recently, I found someone who was missing and
mhm,
it did not end well. She
mhm,
was deceased. And I told them where to find her.
mhm,
And they did. And, the sheriff thanked me and, you know, the parents were screaming at me.
mhm,
I'm like, what? I didn't kill her. What are you screaming at me for? But we wanted the police to help to get you to help us so we could find her alive. Like, mm, she called me yesterday. I mean, I didn't say that, but I felt like it. It's like, yesterday would have been the time I could have done it then. But
I don't think so. In this case, I don't think it would have made any difference. I think it was pretty quickly once she disappeared that she ended up
yeah,
not alive
and
anymore.
I kind of felt that too. But
Mm,
it, um, everybody thinks there's going to be a happy ending when they reach out to psychics, and there isn't always a happy ending. And I don't know where that comes from. I guess it's just wishful thinking on the part of, well, at least these parents.
mm,
But it kind of makes me feel like, well, I should have been able to do something sooner. Um, but we are not, if we tap into something, we can get the information.
mhm.
But I don't hear about every crime that ever happens. So it's sort of a helpless kind of feeling at sometimes because, it's just,
I know when there's like disasters in the world and things like that, it's like, what do I do with this information? I
right.
don't, because it comes through so fast and there's so much of it. It's like, who do you tell? What do you do with it? How do you get it out there? So it's just it's an interesting, I understand why people sometimes call being psychic a gift and a curse.
Yeah.
There are lots of positive things about it, but there's lots of things that you don't always want to see or be a part of or know that happened, but maybe people aren't talking about it yet. So you kind of have to sit with it until they decide the world's ready to start talking about what's really happened. So
Right.
it's just
Yeah,
such an interesting dynamic.
it is. And sometimes, well, I see a lot of things I would rather not see, but sometimes it is truly a wonderful thing to be able to help someone out and save a life. Or in my case, it's usually an animal, but still, it's I blew my cover around here a long time ago with saving the animal thing. I've had more than one person bring something that is dead to me like this, usually a kitten or a puppy, and they come back a week later and it's bouncing around the room, and it's just that is a gift.
Mhm.
That makes my heart happy. But people maybe not so much.
Well, because people can't explain it.
Right.
So I think that makes it a little bit more difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. And the animals are always grateful. The people are always like, how did you, well, yeah.
We talked about this before. I always think of it as like Princess Bride, nearly dead, not quite dead.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, what other things would you like to talk about tonight, Kelly?
Let's see. Um, I think a lot of people are so very frustrated that they're allowing, there's always a war going on. Whether people realize it or not, there's always a war going on. And I think the heaviness that we've had on the planet is starting to make people go a little nuts. Maybe um, where I am in middle of nowhere, I am not the middle of nowhere, but I can see it from here. Um, People are usually kind of laid back and, don't bother me. I won't bother you. I'll stop if yours broke down on the side of the road, but don't expect me to come over for coffee, that kind of stuff.
Mhm,
And they've been a little weird lately.
mhm,
Uh, we always have things flying around in the sky over these mountains. It's just a known thing.
mhm.
And lately, everyone seems to think I know what's happening. I will have people yelling at me about the lights in the sky, like I can do something about it. And I think that's just kind of a general, that's the way it's manifesting here where I am. But
Mhm,
I think in cities, it's manifesting in more crime. I,
mhm,
I think in some areas of the country, it's manifesting in, oh, I don't know, genocide.
mhm,
It's just each and every one of us needs to pay attention to how we feel. Everyone can feel this stuff that's happening. Everyone can. And if you're walking around and you think you're feeling something and you're not sure, investigate it, ask questions, ask yourself questions till there are no more questions to be asked. Because everyone right now has a responsibility to put love and positive energy into the world and to help these people that are completely sleeping figure out what they need to do, because lashing out at each other is not helping anyone. I have a really good friend who has the horrible misfortune of being an insurance adjuster. And, she's telling me, I love my job. I'm going to have to quit. And she's crying. And I'm like, why? And she says, I've done this job 30 years. Lately, she said, in the last year, more people have yelled at her, screamed at her, yelled obscenities at her, threatened her life than in any of the other 29 years.
mhm,
That's not right. That's a problem. But those of us who are awake
mhm.
can help that. And we have a responsibility to help that. We have a responsibility to send that positive energy and to transmute the dark. And how do you do that? I had somebody ask me that. How do I do that? You know what I do? I bundle it up in a big ball and I make it whatever color I want. And I kick it up to God and say, here, do something with this. That's my way.
Another simple way to do it is to stop screaming obscenities and anger on your cell phones, because what you're doing is you're beaming it to space, to the
Yeah.
satellites, and
Yeah.
then it's all getting beamed back to Earth. So
Yeah.
if we really even just think about how we use our cell phones, and trying to have more not angry conversations on our cell phones, there wouldn't be so much being, and I know that's a very simplistic explanation of it, but
My grandmother used to tell me, if you feel like you're yelling, you want to yell at someone or you want to scream at them, take a step back, take 10 deep breaths and rethink your thought.
mhm.
And that does it. But we are so used to instant gratification that we don't do that. And we've really got to get back to being human.
Well, I think there's also anger is acceptable, right? We've learned to accept it in culture. We don't accept being afraid. We don't
Right.
accept being in fear.
Right.
It's more comfortable to be in anger than to say, I'm so scared, I don't know what's going to happen. Instead, you rage at things.
Yeah. And that's something that I have historically in my life had an issue with.
Mhm.
But anger is always masquerading as something else. Always. It's usually grief.
The way I used to explain it to clients when I practice more as a therapist is anger is an umbrella, right? So, what's
Mhm.
under the anger? It's usually hurt, it's fear, it's being alone, it's being scared, it's grief, it's loss. So, to
Right.
really start to look at what's underneath the anger, because that's a really great way to get a handle on it,
Right.
is really start to go, am I really angry?
Yeah. Yeah. And that goes back to that deep healing energy I
Mhm,
was talking about earlier. It's we have a responsibility
mhm,
to do these things.
mhm.
People think, oh, I'm on a spiritual path that's all love and light. No, it is not.
What's
No,
the famous meme that's always gone around? And it's a famous quote, "Do no harm, but take no shit."
yeah. It's just I think a lot of people, and I teach a lot of classes on
Mhm.
spirituality. I had one last weekend, and someone will always say, when we're talking about spirituality, well, I don't buy into all that love and light stuff. Well, good, because that's not what it is. But we do as human beings who are hopefully awake, we have a responsibility to
Mhm.
take care of each other and even those who are a pain in the butt, even those who are not awake, even those like the guy the other day who got in my face and screamed and yelled at me about all this airy fairy stuff doesn't mean anything. Okay, doesn't mean anything to you. I will get on my unicorn and go home now. It just, um, we do. And that's kind of a soapbox that I got onto, but it's really important. And I think all of these spiritual gurus going around preaching love and light, love and light, love and light are misleading people.
Well, one of the things with light, and I learned this really on, is when you keep sending people light, you also illuminate all the other stuff. So one of the things welcome to the person just joining us. One of the other things that I like to send is peace and grace.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And usually, unless it is for a particular issue, I
Mhm.
usually send peace because if you are peaceful, you can figure it out. It's when we get caught up in all of the day-to-day stuff that happens.
Mhm.
You I I feel for my friend, the insurance person, but it's everywhere.
Mhm.
I've seen people yelling at the guy loading hay at the feed store. Why? Do you think his life isn't hard enough? You need to yell at him. It's just we can do better, and we have to do better.
Well, and I think if we circle back full around to kind of wrap things up, it's kind of where we started. We all feel what's going on the planet. It's just coming out in different ways. Those who are more awake are trying to do it in one way, and people who don't really understand what's going on, it's coming out as anger and rage.
Right.
And so, I mean, I think if we could, look at that full circle, same, that's what I always loved about Zen philosophy. The positive and the negative happen simultaneously. You, based on your perspective, decide which way you're going to go.
Right. Yep.
Because how many people, when you're watching this later, have had an experience where you're like, you thought it was the worst thing you ever went through in your life, and then 3 years later, you're like, oh my God, I'm not glad that happened, but boy, did I learn a lot from going through that. And you look at the experience very differently. The experience didn't change, just
Right.
your perspective on the experience changed. And I
And
think that's what we need to keep in mind as we're going through everything in the world right now is what lens are you seeing this experience out of? And maybe it's the lens that needs to change.
right. Exactly. Yep.
So there was my soapbox moment for this evening.
No, it's people have frustrated me since the day I was born. And it's just if you can make the choice to be happy, if you can make the choice to change your perspective, why wouldn't you? And I think it's because so many people feel they have no choice. You do. You have a choice.
I also, before we wrap up tonight, so if anyone has questions, that you want us to talk about in these shows going forward, please reach out to either Kelly or myself, and we will do our best to answer them in coming episodes. So, everybody, have a great night. Thank you for joining us tonight, and we will see you guys all again next week.
Bye.
Bye. Assuming I can get to this button.